Today on Notsam Wrestling, MLW's Court Bauer is my guest. Plus, we will break down Super Showdown. We will break down the week that Cody Rhodes is having, the return of Neville, the crowd in Seattle, and a whole lot more. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Notsam Wrestling.
This is Notsam Wrestling.
Introducing your host from New York, here is Sam Roberts.
Are we ready for this or what? Welcome to Notsam Wrestling. You'll hear, I did our interview this week, and you'll hear halfway through the interview. I told you last week, I got my parents gave me a mannequin for my birthday, which was like 3 weeks ago. If you didn't say happy birthday, don't bother saying it now. You missed it. It's over. But they gave me a mannequin because for my wedding, my wife Jess, for our wedding, I should say, the gift that she gave me, and this is how you can tell I married the right woman, was a ring-used gold dust outfit. Oh, geez, that was very quick. That was a very quick fade out of the music. Excuse me. She gave me a gold dust outfit that was ring-worn. And so they gave my parents gave me a mannequin this year for my birthday. That was like 5 years ago. My parents gave me a mannequin for my birthday this year, so I could display the gold dust outfit properly. And now it is found a place here in the Notsam studio. But every single day, Lila Garrity, the Labradoodle, has to come down here and bark like Dustin Rhodes is down here. So you'll hear in the interview when Lila Garrity gets involved. It's going to be a very fun show today. Very fun show. Of course, we're going to break down Super Showdown. I'm really looking forward to it. I love the international shows, man. The first one, I guess Beast in the East was first, right? The show from Japan. I remember that one because that was July 4th of whatever year it was. And I was in the Adirondacks. Some friends, there are some mountains here in New York. And I was up in the mountains, like literally sleeping in a cabin. My friends' parents have a house where they have acres and acres of land. I mean, out in the middle of nowhere, but thank God they have Wi-Fi, because I had my iPad, and I woke up in a cabin, and I was able to watch Beast in the East in HD right there in the middle of the wilderness on my iPad via Wi-Fi. It was great, and it was live. Couldn't believe it. Then I remember when they did the UK tournament. It was like a Saturday and a Sunday afternoon, getting to watch new live wrestling in the middle of the afternoon on a Saturday. It was a thrill. The Saudi Arabia show, coming home from work, rushing home from work, taking a half day basically, so I could get home at like 12:30 on Friday afternoon, so I could turn on the WWE network and spend all Friday afternoon watching the show. I'm going to have the same feeling with Super Showdown. I know. This is going to turn in, and hopefully they keep doing this in Australia, because when they do it early in the morning, it's going to turn into like the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, but for wrestling fans. You know how you wake up early so you can see the floats and you can see Santa and they're all marching down Macy's whatever on Thanksgiving morning? That's what's going to happen for us watching Super Showdown, because I know I'm going to be up at 5 a.m. It starts at 5 a.m. here on the East Coast. I'm going to be up at 5 a.m. I'm sure I'll be watching from bed, but I am absolutely going to turn my Apple TV on so I can watch Super Showdown. I'm very, very excited. Then I'll be able to play 2K, I think. 2K19. Oh my God, what a weekend. What a weekend I have in store for myself. But before we get to the weekend, we got to get through Notsam Wrestling. And it's a hell of a podcast today. We'll break down all of Super Showdown in the state of wrestling, as well as the other 4 stories of the week that we need to break down. But before we get there, I've got a fabulous interview for you. And that interview is with Court Bauer. Court Bauer is a fascinating guy, very interesting guy, very fun and easy to talk to. He runs MLW, used to be a wrestling promotion, then became a podcast network, now is a podcast network and a wrestling promotion. Of course, all your favorite, I should say other favorites besides the last professional broadcaster, Sam Roberts, and Notsam Wrestling. All your other favorites, your Bruce Pritchards, your Eric Bischoffs, the Conrad shows, all those shows, are MLW shows, which is Court Bauer's podcast network. But he's running MLW, and it really is an amazing thing that he's pulling off. They're doing TV tapings. They're not just doing, random indie shows. They're doing TV tapings for every show, and they have a deal with this network called beIN Sports, and they're also on YouTube, and they put it up every week, once a week. They've got a TV show that goes up, and they do war games, and they did Spin the Wheel, Make the Deal. They've done it. Well, Spin the Wheel, Make the Deal, I think technically goes down tonight at the time of this podcast in New York City. But so much stuff, and so much stuff to talk about with Court and the way he puts everything together in MLW, but also about his time that he spent on the WWE creative team. He spent about 3 years as a key member of the WWE creative team. Not to mention, he's a mega wrestling fan. So a lot to talk about with Court, and I think you're really going to enjoy my conversation with him. Let's get right to it. The interview for this week on Not Sam Wrestling is the one and only Court Bauer.
The Not Sam Wrestling interview.
Here we are. It's the Not Sam studio, and with me here on Not Sam Wrestling from MLW, the podcast network, the wrestling promotion, the universe, Court Bauer. Back for the first time in a long time.
Yes.
But back. What's going on, man? What's the haps?
Your studio has much improved since the last time I was doing this. So awesome. I seriously, every corner I look, this is like wrestling nirvana right here. It's
good.
Really cool.
Yeah. I just wanted to feel very Sam.
Yeah.
When you come down here. You know, the only thing that interrupts the wrestling flow is the sneakers.
No, I love the sneakers. I'm a sneakerhead, so I saw that. I was like, this is the best fusion of wrestling and culture you can get. I love it.
Well, you're one of the few people that got to see this studio as well as the previous establishment where I was broadcasting from.
Yeah.
Which was my living room table. And, you know, luckily you were in Westchester, so I was like, you want to come to my apartment and podcast?
What's crazy, too, when you think about Westchester and all the wrestling history here, because you have Paul Lee, you have Dreamer,
Captain Lou,
Freddie Blassie lived here. A lot of people, Arnold Scollin, a lot of wrestling came through here. Some of the old guys from the 1800s lived here. Muldoon, the original headliner for Madison Square Garden in the 1870s, 80s. So that's
awesome.
It's a pretty hot spot for wrestling. You don't think it when you walk around the mean streets of Westchester,
right?
It's got some rich history in wrestling. You know, especially of course you think about the McMahons. It's their backyard. Yeah,
we're right next. I don't think people realize how close we are to Stamford and all that, but also the Westchester County Center. In White Plains is a building that's been running. I mean, WWE, WWF, but wrestling in general for years. Everybody that's lived in Westchester for any sort of lengthy period of time went there as a kid to watch whatever wrestling was.
100%. I remember going there and seeing WWF and booing the Natural Disasters as a kid, and then seeing ECW and the promo that Paulie got kicked out of the county center for cutting. Pretty explicit promo in its time. And just to see the evolution of, you've had Monday Night Raw there. I remember going there with a fever as a kid, watching it in like 93, 94.
I was probably at that Raw. That was when, they would tape 4 weeks at a time, but that was when they did, it wasn't Bret Hart versus 1-2-3 Kid. It was Nikolai Volkov versus 1-2-3 Kid. Because I tell X-Pac that now. And I'm like, yeah, you remember the match with Bret? Of course. He was like, you were there for that? I was like, no, I was there for the Nikolai match. And he goes, oh.
But I saw a lot of good matches there. There was a great steel cage match, I think, with Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty or something like that. And it was really good. The old blue shark cage. Really good match. And I used to like seeing like the up-and-coming guys they'd have dark matches for. And I remember a young Tommy Dreamer wearing suspenders and baggy pants, sparkling pants, I think, making his, I don't think it was his debut, but doing a dark match. A very young Tommy Dreamer before he had the goatee. And Westchester's own Tommy Dreamer.
Of course.
And so there's a lot of history there. Of course, ECW.
I was at that ECW show. They ran the TV taping,
the last one,
the one and only, because so the Westchester County Center, it's near us here, but it seats what,
2,500,
I would say, but for like ECW, it's perfect. Like, it looks like it's small enough that you could run it, but it was big enough that at the time it was an upgrade from like the Elks Lodge and the ECW arena, and it kind of like just visually is like, wow, look at how much this company has grown. But and there was all this talk when ECW was running the county center. They were doing TNN TV taping,
right?
So it was like 3 weeks of TV or something. But and it was the holidays, but there was all this talk that this was going to be the new ECW arena, that Paulie, everybody knew that Heyman lived around here.
Yep.
So they were like, the county center is going to be the spot where ECW runs. They're going to be here every month. It's going to be amazing. And all of us at the time, all us wrestling fans are ECW fans because we're, more or less the same age. And I mean, the show, of course, Paul Heyman cuts the promo.
He was very fired up. He was very excited to be doing this. I think he was too excited.
Yes.
Got too comfortable, and before you knew it, some profanity slipped, and some things were said, and the county center, which is run by the city of White Plains, was not happy.
And there were also fights happening. Like, I'll never forget. Like, I spent all my money and got floor seats. Not front row, but floor seats. And right behind me, like, these guys are like, they're being super obnoxious, and they're behind us, and they're yelling, and blah, blah, blah. And we just had it all night. And there's this one guy who's sitting right behind us, and he's just this, like, really quiet guy. He's got glasses. I'm a kid. He's like an adult, but he's, like, young. I mean, he's probably younger than we are now. He's probably 20.
Yeah.
But when I'm however old I was, 15 or whatever, he's an adult. But he's this young guy. He's got his glasses on, and he's blind, and he's just sort of, you couldn't pick him out of a lineup. You know what I mean? Just blended in completely. And just something caught him the wrong way. And he had this look. I'll never forget. They must have yelled something, because I remember looking back at him. And he goes, and he takes his glasses off, and he puts them in his pocket, and he looks at his beer, and he just throws it behind him right at the guys, knowing we're going to fight now. And this fight with half this thing erupts. If you watch the Masato Tanaka Mike Awesome match, halfway through the match you can see like Masato Tanaka setting him up for like a top rope powerbomb or something, and he's looking out into the audience because there's this big fight happening, and they're fighting. They finally break it up. They're breaking things like it's ridiculous. They ended up breaking one of the chairs that was there on the ground, right?
Right.
This guy comes back who is getting food. He has the ECW Championship replica on, and he walks back to his seat. He missed all of it, and his chair is broken. And he's like, what happened?
You got the authentic ECW experience is what happened.
Exactly. New Jack jumping off the balcony. It was amazing.
They probably were thinking this was going to be like WWE and the old-timey kind of WWE house show, and ECW was totally not that experience. No matter where you saw ECW, it was not that experience. But it's too bad, because that would have been a really fun, especially for us, a really great home base. But ECW's production's out of Westchester,
right?
In a basement or two of Charlie Berzise's house, and Paul Lee and Tommy were out of here, and so it made a lot of sense to have it be in Westchester, and a lot cheaper than New York City, but a lot more stricter, supposedly so.
I do have the fan cam tape from that night, though.
Oh, really?
I mean, it's probably in my parents' house somewhere, but I have the fan cam tape from that night. So what I like about what's this incarnation of MLW, because you were doing MLW years ago, right?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
A version of it. It wasn't like this.
No.
I feel like this incarnation of MLW is so, the original version was more like, okay, this is our promotion. There was a little bit of edge to it. There was this. This Major League Wrestling today feels so fan infused, right? Like it when I'm looking at the lineups and I'm watching the shows on YouTube and stuff, like I'm like, this is a guy, who's getting to do the stuff that he's like, wouldn't it be awesome if, you know what I always wanted to see? Wouldn't it be cool if, and it feels like that's kind of how you're programming.
Yeah, and I think, too, I make sure we gauge social media, because it's free market research. Hey, what do you want to see? Who do you want to see? And all of a sudden, you'll get flooded with all this feedback on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Even we picked Chicago based on feedback on Instagram for our next market. And it was like, where do you want us to go next? And we just basically counted Chicago. Okay, we're going to go Chicago. And, of course, All In doing rather well there. It made it a logical choice as well. But social media is such a big difference, because you can kind of gauge, is this match going to get hot or not? Let's see what the fans think. And you can kind of get more dialed into your instincts now than back in the day when it was a little bit colder. You put something out, is it going to heat up or not? You don't know.
Right.
The fan has changed today. And that's what's first for me was a real struggle, was booking, and this is traditionally how it is. You're a few steps ahead of the fan, and you're manipulating them to what they want. And now the fan's so sophisticated, and it's not really as much heel versus babyface as it used to be. It's not that Vince Russo thing, but it's just different. Every match has context, kind of like a UFC fight.
Yes.
You can love Conor McGregor, you can also hate him. And so now it's more about context than it's just, okay, he's always going to be your de facto babyface until he does the big angle and turns. You can still sprinkle that stuff in, but it's a different time. 2018 is totally different than wrestling back in the day. It's 24/7. The ecosystem's totally different. It lives and breathes differently than it did.
Yeah, I mean, it's about characters having a reason for doing the things that they do.
Yeah.
And then it's kind of up to us to sympathize with one. I mean, they're operating in totally separate ways. Mm-hmm. Which one do you think is right?
Right.
And either way, that's the right answer, right? Like, as long as you're picking one of them, that's it.
Yeah.
How do you, and this is a pretty basic question, but it's just something I've been curious about, and I think other people are. How do you figure out what isn't copyrighted? And because you see Wargames pop up,
right.
and I think that surprised a lot of people.
Yeah.
Number one, just because it's awesome that there's a Wargames match,
right.
but really because NXT has brought back Wargames already. Like, you see the phrase Wargames on TV. Spin the wheel, make the deal is coming back this week in New York. Like, I thought WWE bought WCW, and you would think that was the IP of Turner.
Well, yeah, and when they acquired it, Turner hadn't trademarked any of these things. And so, they bought the copyright, so it's not like you can go out there and distribute 1997 Slamboree.
Right.
But Wargames was available. It was never trademarked, so we trademarked it about a year and a half ago, year and change, and have that IP. And it wasn't to prevent NXT from using it, or Cody, or whoever, just to protect us, to allow us to do it if we wanted to do it.
So are you providing them a license to use it? But that's the way legally.
Let's just say right now I can't say much about the situation, but soon I will be.
There is a cooperative.
I can't say anything.
Okay, all right, but there is a story there. It's not like you were just like, let's try to do Wargames and see if anybody notices.
No, we had the precedent, and plus we did it in 2003 with Terry Funk, who almost got me arrested that night.
How was that?
Well, he decided to take a branding iron, light it on fire, and blow a big fireball into Steve Corino for the finish. Now, I wasn't aware of that.
By the way, not terribly dissimilar to when he set the ECW arena on fire in '95.
He's a pyromaniac.
It doesn't work out. Hey, this is, people know by now if they listen to the podcast that Lila barks at the mannequin.
Yeah, well,
but she's been laying here the whole time.
Yeah, well, just got to keep on his feet.
Lila, everything's fine. It's a mannequin dressed in a Goldust outfit.
Yes.
And the dog is losing her mind right now.
You should probably tell them what era Goldust, because there was the Fetish Error. There was a lot of different eras.
Oh, no, this, and I've done research on it, because you can see kind of in the outline of the design that there at one point was black sequins there that were taken off. And so I started doing the Google imaging, and it's Intercontinental Championship era Goldust.
Oh, the prime.
Yeah, like to me, it's 96, mid 96-ish era Goldust. So it's very special to me. But Lila seems to have calmed down now. So we're talking about Terry Funk, and the branding iron.
So he blows this fireball into Steve Corino's face. The finish of the Wargames match. The music plays. The fire marshal happens to be in the building and comes up saying, "Who is the promoter?" And they point to me. And Terry Funk is, getting cleaned up, and Corino selling backstage, because kayfabe still kind of existed, even some circles backstage. And the fire marshal says, you didn't have any permits for this. You endangered the crowd. We can arrest you for this." And
you couldn't tell the fire marshal, but everyone's fine.
I'm like, it didn't matter, because they were thinking like maybe they knew about Terry's history, but like suppose if it sparked off and hit someone.
Yeah,
I mean and I was mortified when I saw it. I'm like, oh my God, how are they going to extinguish the fire? And I didn't know Terry was pretty damn good with this, but still, I'm freaking out as it's happening.
You would think as the promoter, you get a little heads up if there's going to be a fireball branding iron.
Every wrestler but Terry Funk, because he's a rebel, and Terry's going to do what he's going to do. And it's the old adage of ask for forgiveness, not for permission.
Right. I just never heard that. I've heard that adage before. Never applied to fire.
Oh, well, Terry Funk would use it for anything. But then, so Terry sees that they're lining me up, and it's not looking good, and there's now 2 policemen by the fire marshal, which is indicating something bad is about to happen. And he comes over, what's wrong here? They explain his story, and he's shaking, bleeding. He goes, puts his arms up like this, just, if you're gonna arrest anyone, arrest me, damn it. Don't arrest him, he's just a child, he doesn't know. Arrest me, damn it, it's my fault, he didn't know. And I'm like, arrest him.
Yeah, you're like, yeah, I'm a child.
And Chino's like, oh my God, he's gonna get her there, what's going on? And he cut a great promo. The fire marshal believed him and said, never again, never come back, and got us out of that. But it was one of those nights as a promoter, like, oh, why am I doing this? Yeah. Oh my God. There's nothing you could have done, because they could have, if I had asked, we had a finish, it did not involve that. Terry was just being Terry, and he wanted to give the fans something big for the finish, and I applaud him for that, but that was insane.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure everybody that was at that show tells that story the way we told, like the ECW White Plains stories. Like, everybody remembers that, but yes, you're right. That's insane
and mortifying, because of the liability, because of the danger, and you wanted to come back to the building. It was a hot building for us, so there was a million reasons I would not have wanted that. It looks awesome in retrospect. It's part of our opening on BN on Friday nights, but it's certainly something that for about 10 minutes I was mortified I was going to end up needing to get bailed out for being a part of.
I don't know if this is too behind the curtain, so if you don't want to share, you don't have to, because it's your product. Sure. But when you're going to do a spin the wheel, make the deal match, right? Mm-hmm. Have you already, through watching, kind of figured out how to gimmick a spin the wheel, make the deal? Yeah. Okay.
That's pretty easy. Yeah. In fact, I'm picking up the wheel. It was built in New Rochelle.
Really?
After we record, I'm going to pick it up. Yeah. So I'm very excited to see how the final product looks.
Is it very similar in your mind's eye? Is it very similar to the original?
It has like the kind of a razor blade.
The buzzsaw looking thing.
Blade. Yeah, it has that. There was a version they did with Vader where there was these massive horns. We don't have the massive horns, but it's we're very curious to see how this plays out. I have a feeling we're going to have to tape the pre-tape where you have everyone assemble and do the spin relatively first in our pre-tape schedule, because people are going to keep spinning that thing and have fun. And it's going to break. Yeah, I know that thing's not making it. We're doing our pre-tapes tomorrow. That thing's not lasting the whole day.
Now, do you feel like you have to discipline yourself because the fan in everybody wants to do the coal miner's gloves match? I know you tweeted about it already, but like, that's really, you remember the Sting Jake Roberts match, you remember the coal miner's glove, but to me, as I didn't grow up on NWA.
Right.
I grew up here, and then my family moved to England, so it was completely WWF, right? Yeah. So my WCW knowledge was from magazines. I could get the WCW magazine in England, but I didn't find out about 605 on Saturday night until I got back here in '93, right? So my only exposure to the original Spin the Wheel, Make the Deal was in WCW magazine. And at first I'm like, that's amazing. What a cool concept. And then they were like, it's a coal miner glove match. And I was like, what?
And it's funny because it's great because of social media. People are like, there's people that really want that match, and there's people like, if you do that, I'm going to be so pissed.
Right. I'd probably be the second group.
Yeah, I mean,
but either way, you want to see, like, you know what I mean?
It's a very affordable option for the promoter. You just get one glove. It's pretty easy to get that.
Apparently wrap some duct tape to it.
yeah. I mean, there's a lot of different gimmicks you can do. So for us, it was fun just to play with it, and you have Jimmy Havoc and Sami Callihan.
Yeah.
Whatever one it lands on, wherever fate takes us, I think it'll be fun.
Well, yeah. I mean, you have to, I guess, be super in tune with what's going on in the wrestling world outside of WWE in order to effectively run something like MLW, because Sami Callihan, I feel like, is just on a streak. I was a big Sami Callihan fan before he went to NXT. You know, I was doing stuff in Jersey All Pro. You know, I was doing commentary and stuff where he was doing shows there. And I just think he's on a streak now like very few people are. And I actually think he's still really underrated for the work that he's doing on the indies. It's pretty remarkable.
He has a real high wrestling IQ, and at a certain point a few months ago, I said, you know what, start coming to our agent meetings. You know, I'd like your input on finishes and match layout. I wanted more out of some of my guys. And before you knew it, he was now an agent and helping to lay out some of the matches for the young guys. He's on the road with these guys. He can help them. He can coach them up. So there was a real advantage to bring him into the fold. And he's never really had that responsibility. But now he is really a veteran on the indies. And so the kids all love him. They all look up to him because he's built this thing in his own sandbox, whereas so many other guys, it's harder to accomplish. So they look up to him, and he's a really good coach. And so, you know, you see his in-ring work and his intense promos, but there's another side to him. He's really incredible when it comes to the behind-the-scenes operational stuff. And in a different era, he would definitely be running a territory. He would probably be a booker and a promoter and all that
kind of feels a little Kevin Sullivan.
Yes. Kevin Sullivan, just there's a lot of those guys that could, you know, wear the trunks but also work with a pencil and a book and map out things, or be a promoter like the Sheik in Detroit. Mm-hmm. He's definitely got some of that in him. And he kind of has that little thing out in Ohio going on. So, you know, he's a guy that also, for us, we have a lot of veterans, a lot of guys that are very experienced behind the scenes, like Bruce Pritchard, Tommy Dreamer. But for MLW to have a younger guy that can speak the talk to the same talent in the locker room, I think that also helps. It gives us a different perspective. All important perspectives, but it's nice to have variety so they can go to one guy over another guy if they feel more comfortable. I believe in versatility.
Definitely. Do you think whether he uses every single thing he learned or not, it benefited Sami to have gone through the NXT process that he went through? Because, like, I feel like, you know, doing WWE stuff, even for me, once a month, has completely opened my eyes. It's changed the way I watch every wrestling promotion, and just seeing the way the machine works. It's all these little tiny details that you just never were aware of. And I feel just like being there once a month, it's turned me into having a better producer's mind. Do you think that, I'll ask, you know, about your experience with that, but Sami going through NXT, do you think that now he sees that side of things as well?
Yes. Yeah. I think it helped him, and I also think it kind of gave him perspective. You go through that system, you're going to be exposed to a lot of different perspectives. You're going to have a lot of different things thrown at you. The WWE operation's huge. What you're expected to do and the way you work there, it's different, and it's another place to learn. But the WWE operation as a whole, it's overwhelming. I think for Sami, I think it was like probably the first real professional production environment he was in. So working at a hard camera, he worked for Ring of Honor and different companies, but the WWE machine would be learning all that stuff about the other side of the business, not just the in-ring, but the other side, I think was probably invaluable to him. Now he then made the decision of you can count on one hand how many guys leave WWE and then pop off somewhere else. I was there when Omega did it. He was in Deep South, the very beleaguered developmental at the time.
And by the way, when Omega did it, that was even crazier because he had developed no reputation for himself. He didn't have any exposure.
No. He basically, and you're blowing up what you're on track to someday do something in WWE. You're blowing that up, and then you're going to Japan, and starting from literally the ground floor and slowly making your way up to where he is now. To me, I remember watching him, and so many guys were neglected in Deep South at the time. But I'm looking at this guy, I'm thinking, I don't know. They're making him do comedy stuff, and I'm like, I don't know. He didn't. I mean, I remember him, but he didn't seem like, okay, this is the can't miss guy. Matt Capitelli to me was a real sad tragedy. He had it, and of course, what happened just was really sad because he could have been in that CM Punk class that came through OVW when Paul Heyman was booking it. He could have been a huge star in the last 10 years, really.
And it really is sad, too, not only the way it all turned out, but just the fact that even in that very beginning, we don't have it because it wasn't presented the way NXT is presented, right? Like, God forbid something like that were to happen to a new guy now, at least there would be... We would all be aware of the potential, not just people like you who were there, right?
Yeah. I mean, you could only get OVW through... they had a tape subscription. Other than that, I mean, it was local Louisville TV. We got the tapes every week, and I thought I learned so much, not just from watching that footage in the creative room, but writer's room, but reading Paul Heyman's emails where he'd assess the talent and you go through everything. I would print those out, highlight them. I still have them in my man cave, in my closet downstairs, all that stuff from that era, because I learned from Paul. Just reading his stuff was invaluable. My experience at WWE was I loved my time there. You know, some people leave, they would have done things differently. I'm sure I would have, but being able to learn right under the watch of Vince McMahon, reporting directly to Vince and Stephanie, was an invaluable experience, because you're part of the central nervous system. Yeah, and you're sitting on video game meetings, marketing meetings. You're branding pay-per-views. You're writing the TV. You're looking at talent. You're trying to assess talent. You're giving feedback to talent relations. You're constantly looking at things in a 360-degree way. You're on the job, basically 24/7, 365. And at first it's overwhelming. It's a shock to the system. And then you adjust, or you fade. And then all of a sudden you're going. And it's just part of, you're conditioned to it. You're having conference calls on Christmas Eve or Thanksgiving morning, and you're just part of it. And once you go through that, everything is a lot easier because you have this perspective, because Vince demands ruthless efficiency and he holds people accountable. And there's this thing in wrestling where it's like kind of a lackadaisical culture sometimes, like, we'll get it right next time. You can't roll with that.
Isn't it wild that is, like, outside of WWE, that is a wrestling thing? Yeah, like every place in wrestling, they go like, we'll figure it out, blah, blah, blah. And that's just not, I mean, WWE has a different version of that where there is sort of a lot of last minute stuff, but
yeah,
you have to be prepared for every scenario so that if there is something last minute, all the details have already been worked out because we did it just in case.
Yeah, there's a system there, and a lot of the last minute stuff is to enhance and improve the product. Yes. Or a guy gets injured and they have to go with plan B or C. But the infrastructure is so great, the system's there to enable things to not slip through the cracks, which was different from the Turner culture where it was lackadaisical. And WWE, you can tell. I mean, it's 24/7, but you're going the extra step to think things through. And I guess I have the McMahons to thank for my high blood pressure, because now I'm like just wired that way to like,
right.
I wake up in the middle of the night, I have something that I forgot about, I put it in my iPad or start sending emails, and everyone's like, oh my God, Court sleeps 3 hours a night. No, but you wake up and you're constantly thinking, and that's
let me do this. I'm not going back to sleep. Let me do this, and then I'll go back to sleep, and then I woke up. I got to do that. Yeah. But it's amazing when you're there because everybody, like you said, everybody's just going, and what that results in, like I still get to look at it from an outsider. You know what I mean? Because I come, I go, I come, I go, right. And what you see is like more than any company, and you know, Sirius is a giant company too, and I've worked at CBS Radio, giant companies, but more than any other place I've worked. You see people that know what they're doing, right? They're not worried about what everybody else is doing. They know what they're doing. They're very good at what they do. They know how to communicate to the person who does this and to the person who does that. And all of a sudden, that's the infrastructure. It's this assembly line of people who are all like super highly skilled, and all of them know that we exist in this reality where we don't fuck up, right? Like we do it right. And if we have to do it twice, if we have to do it 3 times, we're going to do it right. And if we've only got one shot, we're doing it right in one.
And Vince would tell you, if you screw up on live TV, you didn't screw up, you meant to do it. But it is an incredible system. The McMahon way, I mean, people will Monday quarterback it to death. But that culture breeds success. I mean, the proof is in the pudding. Look at the last 40 years.
Yeah, yeah. And really, there's no company that size where one guy is doing as much as one guy is doing there, right? Like there, it's not, it doesn't happen.
No one has that capacity.
Exactly.
No one has that ambition, that drive. I mean, I love Dana, but Dana at this point isn't doing a fraction of what Vince does.
No way.
Look where Vince is at. Look how much money he's made, and he could totally check out and own an island and not even check in on the product. That's not Vince McMahon.
Right. Now, you tell me, because you're part of this wrestling revolution, I would say, where, you know, people are talking about this boom period that is existing outside of WWE. Not to say WWE isn't doing well, but to say that everything outside of WWE is doing a lot better than it has in quite some time. You know, it's just super, super healthy outside of WWE. Do you think, even though you're in that boat, that the WWE deserves more credit than it gets in terms of mainstreaming pro wrestling? Like, do you think that some of the overall health of the industry can be credited to the mainstreaming, which is the work of WWE? Or would you not go that far?
I think WWE, I mean, sustained wrestling when you had the scorched earth thing in the post-2001 era. And they sustained wrestling and generated a whole batch of wrestling, generation and a half now, 2 generations of wrestling. After Turner went down, you had all these pretenders to the throne that never materialized. So they certainly kept it afloat. I mean, Kenny Omega, Cody Rhodes were in WWE. I mean, before anywhere else. I wouldn't be in wrestling today had I not had that critical time where I got my master's degree in wrestling from Vince McMahon and WWE.
And how many years were you there for?
05 to the end of 07.
Which is a lifetime.
Yeah, it's
for
like
people
dog
in that
years.
position.
It's like dog years. Yeah, when you're on the creative team, it's like dog years. And you look at a guy like Michael Hayes, who's been in that world for so long in the creative end, and it's like, wow. And then you think about Pat Patterson, who went from the 80s to the 2000s. It's like, oh my God.
Or your guy Bruce Pritchard.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep. Bruce is a great example of that. 23 more or less consecutive years, a few sabbaticals. But yeah, I mean, they kept it and they sustained wrestling, because without WWE, I don't know what it would have turned into in the last 15 years. I also think they're kind of what they don't offer, because they're so big. They're kind of like McDonald's. They're accessible, they're everywhere, they're affordable. But there's also that audience that wants, glucose-free product. They want something organic. They want something else. And McDonald's can't provide that. And I think that's what's cropped up in the last few years. And it runs the gamut. You have New Japan, you have MLW, you have Ring of Honor, you have Impact, and you have all these other companies in the UK and elsewhere, and AAA and Arena Mexico. It's amazing. And now within a few clicks, you can access all of it. That was the big game changer, I think, that enabled. Technology is always going to be the big bang, I think, for wrestling to start to surge. With cable, it happened in the late 70s, early 80s. It's just going to always be there to help things along. And it's weird, because wrestling fans seem to be more tech savvy than most fans. Like, they're going to find that tech first and use it.
Yeah.
And that's
because they're so content hungry, right?
Yeah. And it's just like they're gonna find it. And I think that's, you look at boxing, you look at MMA, they're not like that. It's very unique to wrestling. It's very cool.
Guys, you know by now the ticket buying process is complicated. Listen to Court Bauer. There are so many shows going on all over the place now in this world of pro wrestling, but figuring out how to get the best tickets and knowing that you're not getting ripped off becomes more and more difficult every day. Well, there's all kinds of sites, varying levels of reliability. SeatGeek. SeatGeek is the way to go, and I'll tell you why. SeatGeek, you see, searches multiple ticket sites and grades every ticket based on value. So whether you want to go to a wrestling show, a baseball game, a football game, football's back, you can go to these games. You can go to a comedy show, a Broadway show, a concert that's going to be near you or far from you. Figure out your transportation, but SeatGeek is going to get you in the building, and here's how they do it. I have it on my phone. It's so easy to use. I go on. Honestly, I use SeatGeek just to figure out what's happening in the area. Just if there's anything that I want to see that I shouldn't. You don't have to miss these concerts. You ever listen to the radio and they're like, oh, J. Cole was at Madison Square Garden the other night. And you go, I didn't know J. Cole was in town. Well, if you had SeatGeek, you could just turn it on every now and then, scroll through your area, and it'll tell you who's in town. And if you want to go see the person, if you want to go see the event, it'll show you a seating chart. It'll show you what tickets are available. It'll grade the tickets green, yellow, red based on value. So if you want to just get the best seat in the house regardless of price, SeatGeek has your back. If you want to make sure that you're getting the best value price, SeatGeek has your back. My point is that SeatGeek is watching out for you, and that's because you listen to Not Sam Wrestling. SeatGeek has been our most loyal sponsor by far, and a sponsor that I hope you all support. They're great, great people over there, and they make the experience so much easier. They're so confident in their product, and I'm so confident in their product that we are getting together, and we are giving you $20 off your first SeatGeek purchase. $20 off your first SeatGeek purchase. All you need to do is download the SeatGeek app, enter promo code SAM, and that's it. Buy your tickets. Promo code SAM, S-A-M, for $20 off your first SeatGeek purchase. SeatGeek, life's an event. We have the tickets. Now, back to Court Bauer. No, yeah, MMA is interesting because the majority of the fans are fine watching a pay-per-view every month.
Right.
And that's what they watch. That's their UFC, and they'll talk about it all the time. And but there's not, they just don't have that thing where wrestling fans, and that's why, like, you know, I'm when Bruce started doing his podcast, I was like, this is a great podcast. I did every podcast that Conrad has done. I've only supported it. And, like, you know, Edge and Christian coming along and all these guys coming along. It's like, support it because wrestling fans are so content hungry that after 4 years of doing this, I'm still here because there's still going to be an appetite for it.
Yeah, and I think for fans too, it's like now if you've missed Steve Austin, you can get him once or twice a week.
Yeah. And
he's talking shop with young wrestlers, old wrestlers, and different guys. And I think that's so cool to be able to have access to someone you haven't had access to.
It's incredible.
Yeah, I mean, that's what's cool, and you get to learn a lot. If you're a student of the game, there's so many people now podcasting you can learn about the art of booking, and to have access to one of the guys have drawn more money than anyone in the history of the business, like Austin, and learn from him and learn about him, I think is fascinating.
I mean, it goes back to the thing of getting the emails from Paul Heyman and just reading them and learning from them, even though he's not teaching you, right? Like, even if Steve Austin is not sitting there going, here's my podcast where I teach you how to get money in wrestling. Like, you just listen to the podcast, and through, like, these little things that he doesn't even know he's teaching you, you're like, oh my God. Yeah. That's the brilliance right there.
Yeah. And that's, I think, so cool that you have access to all this content. You can stream it, listen to it, and the appetite for wrestling is ferocious right now.
Yeah.
And you got, so for me as a promoter, you have to give them something different, and you got to give the fans what they want. And so it's almost like you make the matches, and then sometimes you retroactively build the storylines to it to make it work.
Right, because people want to see this match.
Yeah. And
totally.
Then I'm also doing TV every week on BN Sports. So, you know, you got to find a way to connect that story. You're selling tickets for a match in a month, but you also got to connect it sometimes retroactively to make it work episodically for national TV.
Yes.
Which is like, there's a lot of creative algebra going into that sometimes.
That's crazy. I didn't even think of that, but you're 100% right. Now, you run shows about once a month, is that right?
Yeah, every 4 weeks.
So is it, and I know you have guys under contract, but I mean, with the quickness that guys are getting scooped up these days by NXT, WWE, even New Japan to some extent, but really NXT is doing it a lot. Like Matt Riddle is probably the last casualty for you guys. And I say that casualty for you, obviously for him, he's doing great.
Yeah.
I mean, I saw him on Twitter in an NXT ring and like lost my mind. I'm so excited.
Yeah.
But of course, the last one was Phoenix and Pentagon that everybody was talking about online. Is it a major stressor for you that, like, okay, I have to build a promotion and have some kind of long-term vision.
Right.
But at the same time, I'm using all these awesome dudes, and as they get better and better, there's really big fish that are going to want them.
Well, too, I mean, for most of our contracts, they're 2 to 3 years. So you have kind of a sense of, okay, where are we tracking year to year? And by that final year of your contract, all right, do we have to now transition away and anticipating you're not going to, and hopefully they'll just be straight up, hey, listen, my intention is to go free agent, my intention is to go this, cool, as long as no one's tampering, but that's, go for it. But you know, you got to think about wrestling too. There are guys who you're going to make your franchise guys, but then you got to freshen things up, and that's what I'm doing right now. This week I've been looking at our roster and where is it going to be in 2019, because if TV 52 weeks, you can't have the same faces all the time, or it's going to be like, okay, 60-minute show, it starts to get a little tired, and we run out of fresh opponents. So there's guys I want to cycle in and guys I want to cycle out.
Like the territory days.
Yes. And so like we're going to be bringing in a big star, and we're going to announce him on Thursday to our house in New York at the Melrose Ballroom. And I'm excited for that one. And that's going to pop things off. That's going to be real fresh, I think.
Are people going to be surprised, excited?
I hope. Yes. I mean, he's certainly a guy that everyone knows, so I think it's going to be exciting. And, we always have variety in our shows. We have the new era guys. We have some guys from the Lucha Libre end from Mexico. We have guys like Jimmy Havoc from the UK.
You got PCO and La Parka?
PCO and La Parka. The original, and that's the funny thing, because people they're like, is this the real La Parka? Which one is this? Because there's been some fake ones in AAA. There's a million of them. This is the original one. The guy from WCW, the badass.
Because so what's the deal with that? He lost because he's technically now billed. The original La Parka is billed as L.A. Park.
L.A. Park, yep.
But this is the guy the chairman of WCW.
The chairman of WCW. He was in MLW in 02 and 03. He's been running Roughshod all over Mexico, selling out the Arena Mexico with Rush, doing a hell of a lot of business in just the last year. I mean, he's been on a tear.
Why did he have to change his name?
He had left AAA, and Antonio Pena was very forward-thinking, which you have to be as a promoter to be successful, and he trademarked a theme that's continued.
Antonio did, yeah.
He trademarked all of his signature characters, Octagon, La Parka, etc. So,
because I guess even more in AAA, theoretically, it's a mask, right? You put another guy under the mask, and you can maintain the character.
Pena is the closest thing. I never met him, but from working with the Roldan family, that's his family, and as well as Conan, you get a sense that he was very much a kindred spirit with, like, Vince. Mm-hmm. He created an intellectual property, he trademarked it, he merchandised it, and he owned it. And so when L.A. Park had a falling out, he still used La Parka. And they ended up in litigation over it, and ultimately he had to just adjust it a little bit to L.A. Park.
Now he's L.A. Park.
And he still will go back now to AAA. He was just there recently. So
as L.A. Park.
Yeah, well, that's wrestling. I mean,
wrestling is amazing.
Brock Lesnar in WWE. Yeah. It's just like that. Eric Bischoff in WWE.
Absolutely.
It's just like it's a business. What's the right move for business for you and for them?
And it really is fun to be in 2018 when a match like that, like L.A. Park and PCO.
Yeah.
Who PCO is Quebecer Pierre. Like, the idea that both these guys, like, if you told me in, 97, we got La Parka versus Jean-Pierre Lafitte.
Yeah.
You'd be like,
show New York City.
Right. You'd be like, what? But now it's like, whoa, that's happening. I got to see that.
Yeah, and I mean, I think even like we did a show a few weeks ago in Fort Lauderdale, and the PCO came out, and the crowd was lukewarm, and they started brawling with Brody King, and they're like, oh, this is a crazy match. They're doing crazy stuff. Then all of a sudden, PCO climbs to the top rope. Brody's outside with a bunch of referees and officials, and he moonsaults to the outside of the ring onto Brody King, onto all these guys. And everyone's like, oh my God, this guy's amazing.
Yeah.
Where's he been? And so he's been phenomenal. And to see his resurgence in 2018, there's a lot of parallels between LA Park and PCO.
Definitely.
This year.
Definitely. It's a perfect matchup.
Yeah, like they are built like brick houses, and like they are really still good, and they're heavyweight brawlers.
Yeah,
and I think they're going to have a hell of a match, and they're going to close out that show, and I think it's.
Are they going to close out?
They got to.
That's awesome.
After that,
how do you follow it?
How do you follow it? So that's absolutely our last match to go on. And those two beasts are going to be a lot of fun to see what they do in there.
That's so great. So going back to what we were saying before, so like, do you have? And I'm going to use Pentagon as an example only because he's like. One of my, if not my favorite guy outside of WWE right now, and I'm just like, if I was, if I had free will and I was like, who's the next guy to come to NXT? I'm like, get Pentagon right now. And honestly, put him on the main roster and have him with Andrade and do a thing. But whatever, that's me, diving into ridiculous fantasy booking. But does somebody like that, who like realizes like, whoa, I went from like nice little buzz, Lucha Underground, to like, I'm super hot right now. Right. Does a guy like that ever come to you and go like, Court, I know we signed this 3-year deal, but like, I'm super hot right now.
No, they're really happy. All of our, first of all,
and I don't again. I'm not just talking about Pentagon. I'm talking about is that a conversation that you worry about that happens?
If it happens, it happens. Right. Like Vince would say, he'd have guys going to him and say, "Listen, I can do big things somewhere else, or I just want to leave. You're not paying me enough." And he's like, "Listen, if you're not happy, go." Mm-hmm. I mean. Now you could point to a few occasions where he held them to their contract, perhaps, but he doesn't want people around, and Bruce has said this on his podcast, and it's true, he doesn't want people around that aren't happy, and then they become malcontents, and that's contagious. If I have a malcontent, he's gone.
Gotcha.
So, I want everyone to be contributing. I want to be positive. You want that enthusiasm because it's infectious, and it brings up the work level, and you see it in the ring. When the bell rings, you see it. So if a guy were to come at me, it depends from a business decision what we need and where they're at. But the one thing I wouldn't, if I sense tampering, I would, that would be a problem.
Well, yeah, you can't.
That's always going to be a thing. There's been a lot of fast and loose with that, and that's the danger zone for us. If it's done the right way, your contract's ending. Fine.
It is what it is. Yeah, that's the business. Yeah.
But if you just sign in a month later, like, I don't know what to do here. They want me now. I'm like, well, I don't know what to tell you.
You signed.
You signed. But we haven't. I mean, it's a hypothetical. We haven't had that. Like, our guys are really happy, and what we do with our deals is, they're on national TV. They're in 55 million households every Friday. It gives them exposure. It allows them to get booked anywhere and everywhere. And if they're hot, they're going to get hotter from that. But we also allow them, it's open borders. Go work and you do TV for Ring of Honor, Impact, Lucha Underground. Go to AAA, take all those bookings you can. Go to New Japan.
It's very open.
Yeah, like Brian Pillman Jr. We've had some brief conversations about him going to the New Japan dojo, and I think it would be beneficial. And we have a long-term deal with him, so I'm not worried about that. I think it's a win-win for all parties, and so if that makes sense, and if we can make that happen, I think Pillman there would be fantastic.
So the deals generally, because that's another one, like Brian Pillman Jr. I'm just I feel like throughout this year, every month the buzz just starts rolling. Like at first it's just stuff on Instagram, right? And then it's I hear about this guy again. And then the promos start popping up, and then he becomes a pretty big fixture on MLW. And it's I just feel like that's a name that really built this year, and I feel like over the next year he's going to be one of those guys that everybody starts talking about. Do the deals generally work where you go and do whatever you want? You know what I mean? But you have to come to all our shows. Yeah,
we have priority. Don't miss TV. Go.
It's once every 4 weeks. So go do your thing. But here's the schedule.
Yeah. And if we add to the schedule, rock on. You're now making more money, doing probably more TV, doing more of this.
Gotcha.
But we want you to fill up your dates. A guy like Pillman needs to be working as much as possible.
Yes.
I'm not telling you, hey, do us and just sit at home. Go to the UK. Go work for Rev Pro. Go work in Mexico. Go work in Japan. Go work in Germany. Go work in Jersey.
Yeah. Any organization that would be as open as you are.
Yeah. Go have at it. Be safe, learn, and the more systems you're exposed to, the better you're going to become. You'll learn from different people, different things. The weird thing about wrestling, though, is you have a lot of people giving you feedback, a lot of random promotional bookings. Say, that was a great match. And then they'll come back and they'll work for us. And I'm like, what the hell was that you just did out there? Oh, man, I've been doing that on the indies. It's really good. I was like, no. But again, it's if you don't believe me, talk to Low Key, talk to Conan backstage, who's an agent with us now, talk to Bruce, talk to Dreamer, talk to Callihan, get a collective sense for this, because sometimes there's so many promoters, there's so many quote-unquote bookers, but they're not really giving you qualified feedback sometimes.
Gotcha.
So you got to be careful, because then you got to break these guys of these habits they pick up over the next few weeks. But they have to learn that now, because if they don't learn that now and they go to WWE and they just get a little bit of momentum, then everyone's going to be in their ear and backstage, but you want to be selective with who you take feedback from.
Yes.
Because if you're taking feedback from a perennial curtain jerker over that of The Undertaker, I've seen that happen, and it's horrible, because a guy has momentum and he's like, yeah, but this guy's saying this, and I don't know if Taker's right. I'm like, who drew money?
Right.
Who's had this
But you just listen to the advice that you want. I want to do what that guy said. So I don't know if Taker knows what, and it's what?
Yeah. It's no. Listen to the guys had the 30-year run.
Yeah.
But the other thing that's weird too is it's familiarity. Maybe you're driving with the guy that's the curtain jerker, so he's your buddy, and the other guy, he doesn't really get me. He doesn't know me, mate. It's insane, but always it's such an important thing is when you're young, you don't realize there's different types of feedback. There's quality feedback, and then there's the ignorant feedback. You got to be careful with that, and you don't know until you're kind of just mature,
right?
And it's so hard to know that, and to know, okay, well, maybe that guy's just telling me to slow down. Well, there's more to it, and different feedback means different things. I had one guy that was doing one spot, and he's all of a sudden a tough MMA guy, and then he's this like begging off Ric Flair, Ted DiBiase thing. I was like, wait, you did like 5 things in this match. It's like totally schizophrenic. What's your persona? I have an idea, but you tell me what you thought of that, how that played to the audience. And so the wheels will start turning. And because I don't want the last thing you want to see from a young guy is the yeah buts. Yeah, but no, just think about it. And we're all here to build you up. We don't want to see you fail. There's no reason to sabotage you. We're just trying to give you perspective. We want you to understand. And that's one of the challenges you have. You have all this great indie wrestling, but sometimes the guys just there's certain things they just aren't quite equipped to learn until they've been in a bigger system.
Right, of course, and interacted with more people and been around that. I had Joey Janela down here right after All In.
Yeah.
And then, a couple weeks after that, he goes and jumps off a ring onto Psychosis, and his knee is where his elbow is, and it's just like, it's going to be out, he says, possibly for the better part of a year. Like, it's tough, especially in the position that he's in. As a promoter, booker, Janelle is one of your guys.
Yeah.
Do you go like, well, there goes that. There goes those plans.
No, first of all, you feel for the guy.
Yeah.
When I woke up, I saw someone had sent me the video on text. It's a classic promoter. You're going to get the worst news late at night or first thing in the morning. And I always dread looking at my iPad when I wake up. I'm looking at it, I'm like, oh no, I knew it was bad. And I went, oh man. I checked in with Joey, and then you kind of wait until he went through the test that Monday. And you feel for a guy because he's not like, maybe people don't realize he's been around for a bit.
Yes, he has.
So he's just starting to generate that critical momentum, and there's a lot of interest and curiosity about him and a lot of enthusiasm.
Especially after that All-In match.
Yeah, and then, well, you know what, though? I saw him days later. He was in Fort Lauderdale for us, and I saw him.
Yeah, that's right. He, you know what he did? He did All-In.
Yeah.
He was back here for like a day. He came here, and then he was going to Florida for you. Yeah.
Yeah, and I saw him, and he was kind of limping in the lobby. I said, hey, man, how you feeling? He goes, nah, I'm hurting. And that was before, and he had I would say a pretty tame brawl with Tom Lawler at our show, and it wasn't like he was getting really dinged up. I didn't need that from him for that match. I didn't want that. But then you see, he always goes 200% into things, and that was just a freak thing that happened.
Yeah.
And I know he was pretty dinged up going in, but now he has time. And the thing that he has is an opportunity. Now that he's on the shelf for some period of time, 6 months, 8 months, 10 months, 12 months, who knows. But I look at a guy like Dwayne Johnson who wasn't clicking, and he had, I think, a separated shoulder or some sort of injury. He was out for like 6 months, 97-ish. And he sat and he just watched tape. He watched his own matches. He watched who was connecting and why they were connecting over that period where he was down. When he came back, it was like the light bulb had gone off.
Yeah.
And his IQ was through the roof.
Yeah.
He always had it. He was a blue chipper. But he came back, he was a different man and a different set of eyes. So with Joey down, now he can maybe see, okay, how can he continue to level up? It's a great advantage. Take that time and use it and enhance yourself.
Yeah, and I think that applies to any level because, you think about the Triple H injury.
Yeah.
And, like, he was already a main event guy. But I'm telling you, I've been to a lot of Madison Square Garden shows. And I was at the Raw when Triple H came back after being 8 months on the shelf. Yeah. And part of it was those amazing vignettes and part of it, but the ovation that guy got when he walked through the curtain after the injury, I still have not heard anything that loud.
You know what I think he learned during that downtime?
What?
How to carry himself like a main eventer. Because he was always like that, knocking on that door. But when he came back, the second he walked out, every move just screamed, I'm somebody.
Yeah.
I'm a main eventer. And it wasn't pandering. He wasn't begging for it. He just knew he was. And that, you watch the pre-injury, post-injury, that guy came back with a serious swagger.
Yeah.
And that to me is what gave me goosebumps. It's giving me goosebumps now thinking about
me
that
too.
moment.
I mean, yeah.
I mean,
because you're 100% right.
Yeah.
It's the that's what he probably figured out is the tiny details in that, like, it's not about making sure that you win the title. It's about the second the eyes are on you until the second the eyes are no longer on you. Every moment, present yourself the way you want to be perceived.
It's how it's the rhythm of your breathing. It's where your eyes are. It's your body language. It's if you're relaxed. It's every little subtle thing, and it's like with that stuff. It's very holistic. It's all interconnected, and when it connects, it's dynamite for a guy like Triple H, and he's never lost it. When he came back, it truly was a new era. And that wasn't hype. It really was. He had re-engineered himself in a bigger, grander sense.
Speaking of guys who have re-engineered themselves, I mean, you hear, not recently, but, maybe even a decade ago, but in the years that have passed, you hear stories about Conan. You hear stories about Teddy Hart. There's a bunch of guys. You hear some stories about Loki. Yeah. Like, there's a bunch of guys on your roster that do have histories, various stories throughout the bad boys. But it seems like they're family at MLW shows.
Well, yeah.
Do you think that that's because they've matured in general? Do you think it's something about the show itself that you're putting on?
I think it's also because I can relate to them, because I think I've also had some interesting stuff in my background, and even MSL, there's like that notorious side to you. So there's a little bit where you can relate to the guys, but you also can speak to them on a different level. Mm-hmm. There's a kindred spirit thing there. With Conan, it's like a guy that I met. It was like 2011 on LinkedIn. He just reached out to me, Charles Ashenoff. I was like, this is random. Is this really that Conan? This is random. So I was curious. I said, this is probably a fan, but okay, I'll accept. Mm-hmm. And he's like, yo, man, long time, never talked to you. And we got on the phone once, and we talked for like 4 hours, and we never met, never crossed paths. We became like best friends. And ever since then, it's been great. I've worked with him in AAA, Lucha Underground, and now in MLW. It's really cool. We've done the podcast thing, so that's cool. And then Teddy, I was the crazy guy that convinced Vince to inexplicably hire him, along with, at that time, this was 2007, Harry, Davey Boy Smith Jr., of course, TJ, Natty, and originally that was going to be the Hart Foundation and the Harts versus Sean and his students from the Texas Wrestling Academy. Paul London, Spanky, Brian Kendrick. I was wanted them to recruit Daniel Bryan, and then you have Sean, and then you have Hunter, and you have Shane and Vince versus Brett and all the other guys, and maybe the eccentric Uncle Jim. And we got to the point where we signed them, and they were in the Florida system, and I had MSL kind of like taking care of Teddy Hart and making sure everything was copacetic, and then I left WWE, and everyone but Teddy stayed, and then Teddy kind of went in a different direction. Teddy today, he's definitely more grounded, and I think he has perspective today that he didn't have back in the day. And I can speak to him very honestly, unlike probably any other guy, because I've known him for so many years. Like, dude, let's not screw this up. Let's keep our eye on the prize, and just have faith, trust the system, trust the process. And the Hearts have gotten over. They're our biggest act. The hottest selling shirt in the history of MLW. Pillman, Davey Boy, and Teddy, there's something about them. They each have a different quality, different personality, different strengths, different weaknesses, but they're the classic trio that, it's like Animal and Hawk. Separately, I don't think they would have been perennial main eventers, but together they were something special. And I see that in a different way in the Hearts.
So you've got, when you look down at like who's on the show, of course, we talked about PCO and Parka, but you've got Davey Boy Smith Jr. and Teddy Hart. You've got guys of that generation. Then you've got the super buzzed about guys, Pentagon, Phoenix. But you've also got this whole crop of guys, the Shane Stricklands, the Lawlers, the Brian Pillman Jr.'s, like the
Selena De La Renta is a huge star in the making.
Right. Let's say MLW blows up. Hunter calls you up. He goes, Court, come on home. But you go to NXT and he's like, who do we need? Who do we need right now? Not in a year from now. Not, maybe you could tell me who we need in a year from now. But who do we need now? Who do you think? And I know that you probably don't even want to say, because you're like, I want them in MLW. Why would I want them elsewhere? But who do you think, for people who might not watch MLW on a regular basis, that they should watch these people and know, they're NXT ready now?
Yeah. Well, it's like certain acts just in that institutional setting are not going to work. The bad boys don't work, and they can't be who they truly are in that setting. It's never going to mesh well. There are the guys that I think that could ascend and do well. I look at a guy like Shane Strickland. I think he would definitely do very well in the system. Guys like ACH, also would do very well. I'm surprised the guy hasn't gotten a look because he can cut a promo. You know, I just watched when it's going to air this Friday for us on Fusion, and dude he can cut a real good promo, and he's got charisma, and he can go in the bell ring. It's like he checks off all the boxes. Yeah, and he's built like a. He would tell you. He's maybe not built like a football player, but I'm like, man, he is he's a good runner. He's got the muscle on him. He's a great attraction. Guy like Jason Cade, I think has a lot of upside that a lot of people are sleeping on right now. Guy like Rhett Giddens, he's like 6'3", jacked up. Dude has a great look. Does a crazy version of the Razor's Edge, which I love. Those are great guys. Tom Lawler, he's got a mix of the Roddy Piper promo in him, that little defiant wise ass thing. Yeah, a little bit of CM Punk in him too. He's phenomenal.
I'm a big Tom Lawler fan. Yeah,
I mean, like I look at who I'm building around in the next 12 months. He's one of the guys. Yeah, I mean, he's got it, and he's a guy that's down to do media, and he's great at it. He's doing Sirius this week, and he does stuff for BN all the time. And I'll just have him go out there, and I know he's not going to say anything insane, crazy, or otherwise. We're in good shape. And one of the secret weapons I have, and one of the first guys I signed, was Tony Schiavone. And that was huge for us because he started with the podcast with Conrad, and I thought, okay, we're going to do. And originally, MLW was just going to be one show back to like celebrate the new generation of wrestling, and then that was it. Wale and MSL convinced me I could do it. All right, I'll do it, and then I'm done. And then within 3 weeks, I'm sitting down having network meetings about a national TV deal, which is like, oh my god. So, looking back, it was totally by design something different. And I said to Tony, hey, let's do one time. It won't be a big deal, trust me. And if you don't feel it, it's in post-production, we can sweeten it. And he goes, oh, all right, I'll do it for you as a favor. And I could tell, I knew by the time we were doing our first show that we were going to be coming back, and we had it already locked in to come back and do another show. So right in between matches, I went up and told Tony, hey, we're coming back with another show. I want you to do it. You okay? He had so much adrenaline. He's like, you got it. Let me check my schedule, but 100%. And he was in. And then a week later, he called me. He's like, yeah, I don't think I'm going to do it. I'm out. I'm like, Tony, no, you got to come back. I convinced him. I begged with him. I think I cut a promo and wouldn't let him talk for 30 minutes on the phone. And I think he just forfeited. All right, I just want to get this guy off the phone. I'll do the show. He came back, and then a few months later, he's still doing it. And I said, hey, Tony, what if we did weekly TV? and so now he's hosting wrestling again.
You have him back doing weekly wrestling.
Yeah, and it's been wonderful having him with Rich, and of course Rich Brennan in NXT, now Rich Bocchini, and it's been a lot of fun having Tony back in there. And I think for a lot of people, it's a voice from their childhood. And a lot of people think MLW is very retro because they're hearing that voice. Just like I think they saw Joey Styles, who was part of the original MLW, and thought, oh, it's so ECW. Because they connect the voice with what they remember from that league they loved. But Tony's a different Tony in 2018 than he was in 98 or 94. And I think now it's been really cool because he gets to write a new chapter in his legacy in wrestling, and I think it's a very positive one because he's enjoying himself, and we don't ask a lot. He'll tell you we ask a ton, but it's one day a month, and you can still do outside stuff for University of Georgia and the Braves and stuff, and as long as he's having fun, we're happy to have him. But he was one of the first guys I was like, oh god, I got to sign this guy ASAP, and we're really happy with him. He's done great for us.
Is there any story about because I just thought of it, what happened with MVP? Because for a while he was doing a podcast on your network and doing a bunch of stuff with you, and then he didn't he tweet at some point like, hey, I'm not involved in that anymore? Yeah. And it was just kind of like, why?
Yeah, there was accumulation of things, and I go back years with the guy, and he was an agent behind the scenes in MLW, and he was part of the revival. But certain circumstances come up, and it was a very difficult call I had to make, and it wasn't easy, and he was shocked, and it sucked. It sucks for both of us. That was not something I had any desire to have to do. Certainly not, something I look back on and was thrilled with, because you're saying you're hitting the pause button on someone that you wanted to be a part of this, but circumstances and situations had led us down this path. And he's incredibly talented, and I think you look and he's certainly busy to this day doing different things. I'm very fond of the guy, and it's the hard part when you're doing business with friends. And I have a lot of friends I'm doing business with right now. So it's like,
in the beginning, you're just giving them opportunity. This is great. But then it comes time to actually do business.
Yeah. That's when it sucks. Yeah. And that's when it's like you're just miserable the rest of the week. And, you want to kick out from feeling like that. But you're like, man, this sucks. And it's like, it's a double-edged sword when you do business with friends. And it's not always like great and high fives when you have something like this happen. So, it's to this day, it's like, it's not an easy thing for me to talk about because, it was what I would consider a fairly shitty situation. And, I just wish him the best. And, I'm never going to, knock him or anything. I really think I was very fond of his contributions and I owe him a lot. He really helped get MLW up and running. And, there's certainly days when I think, man, I wish things had been different. I would have loved to have had a homecoming for him in Miami and South Florida and had him in Wargames, which was the original design. So it's like you definitely, you have to live with those decisions and, the frustrations of what happened that led to that.
Yeah. Well, look. This podcast comes out on Thursday, so if you're in New York and you're listening the morning it comes out, then tonight you're in Queens.
Yep.
MLW is live. But for everybody that's listening around the world, I usually catch up on the MLW YouTube channel.
Right.
Where you can get their weekly TV. You can go back if you haven't been watching. You can find the Wargames match. You can find the Battle Riot, which was a super fun match to watch. And a whole bunch of stuff. But where can they get you beyond YouTube?
Yeah, you can watch us on BN Sports on Friday nights, 8 o'clock, and then they have a replay usually around 11 o'clock. Number 1 and number 2 rated show on BN Sports for Friday nights. Our replay beats everything but our original run of the show, which is crazy. And you can watch us 6:05 Saturday nights on youtube.com/Major League Wrestling because Tony at 6:05 on Saturday nights just feels right.
Right.
And what we do for that version is we give it kind of a supersized director's cut version. We'll add stuff we couldn't fit into the BN show, which is only an hour. So, you get the full match, some bad language once in a while. One time, Joey Janelle might have done something in MJF's locker room involving a condom that had to be censored by the network that you'd see in its full raw state, so to speak, on YouTube. But if you want to learn more, go to MLW.com, Facebook.com/Major League Wrestling, and Twitter, MLW. And check us out tonight at the Melrose Ballroom, $20 tickets, and it's going to be a huge night. And I'll tell you, we're going to have at least 1, maybe 2, maybe 3 surprises. So
amazing.
Check it out.
By the way, MJF is another one. How wild is it how good he is as young as he is?
It's funny because I was talking to, we had WWE folks at a show several months ago, and they were backstage just talking, and they said, hey, how old is MJF? He's 26? I was like, no, dude, he's 21. Yeah, he has that level of experience. Not that he looks it, but his poise when we're talking about Hunter.
I mean, I blinked. I knew him when he was like training.
Yeah.
And then the next thing I know, I'm turning around and I'm like, he's there already. Right. He's figured it out.
Yeah. I mean, he has unlimited potential. And he was actually the first male wrestler we signed. Celine De La Renta was the first female and MJF was the first male. And those were like, I knew I could build around those two in different ways. Yeah. They had unlimited potential, and they have more than exceeded my expectations. They are 2 to watch in 2018, 2019, and beyond. They got it. And they're both 21, 22, which is crazy.
Amazing. Yeah. You know what the only thing I would change about MJF is? I would shave his face clean. Yeah. He has these like mutton chop things going, and I'm like, it'd be way more obnoxious if you're totally clean shaven. And also, there's something about being clean shaven that when you tell somebody you're better than them, it's like it hurts more. Yeah. You know what I mean?
I always tell him, go more preppy and go the Vineyard Vines route.
Right.
And in fact, we even played with that with him getting a Vineyard Vines sponsorship, which, if you know what Vineyard Vines is, that's real heat.
Yeah, that's legitimate heat. Court Bauer, it's always a pleasure, man. Thank you for hanging.
Hey, thank you, man.
For sure.
Here is Sam Roberts.
Great guest is Court Bauer here on the podcast. It's been a while since he was on, but really fun catching up with him, and I'm glad he had the time in his day to make time for Notsam Wrestling. And check out MLW. Check out everything that's going on in this wild, wild wrestling world. There was actually a couple of things I wanted to talk to you guys about. One was a thought that I had. As I was talking to Court Bauer, I was talking about a bunch of different independent guys, a bunch of different up-and-coming superstars. And like Joey Janela, for example, a few weeks ago, I loved having him on the show. I loved having him down in the Notsam studio. And over the past several weeks, it's really got me to thinking, and it got me to thinking heavily as I was talking to Court Bauer, that as much as I love talking to the biggest stars in the world of sports entertainment, the WWE superstars, and as much as that will never end, right? I will always have big WWE guests on this podcast because I like that, and I think it's something that you guys enjoy. I would like to know if there is an interest in me starting to maybe focus a little bit more than I already am on the up-and-comers. You know, on the, let's just say, the Joey Janela class. And I don't mean that to say that Joey Janela is better than anybody. I mean that to say Joey Janela most recently was on this podcast. But if you are interested in guys, you know, some of these guys might be guys you haven't heard of yet. Some of these guys you will have heard of, but somebody else hasn't heard of. If you are interested in me getting guys on that are maybe earlier in their careers but have a pretty solid buzz about them, I'm talking about the MJFs of the world. I'm talking about the Brian Pillman Juniors of the world. I'm talking about the guys that we talked about with Court Bauer and beyond. You know, you look over at Impact and maybe the Falabas of the world, maybe the Kevin Matthews of the world. Maybe, you know, there's a ton of people that are out there that could benefit from the exposure of this podcast. And I think that me as the interviewer and you guys as the listeners could really benefit from their stories and from what they're doing and from hearing what life is like from that perspective in the world of wrestling right now. So if that's something you're interested in, hit me up on social media or email me at notsamwrestling@gmail.com and let me know. Or, you know, be candid with me. If you're not trying to hear the up-and-comers, if you're here for star power, tell me that too. You know, I want to know, and I want to give you guys exactly what you want out of this Not Sam Wrestling podcast. The whole point of Not Sam Wrestling is that we're building a community around the show. That's what I'm trying to do over at Patreon. That's what I'm trying to do even outside of Patreon, just with this show, is build a sense of community where it's all about just being fans of wrestling. And on that note, the conversation about ratings came up again this week, and we talked about it last week in the State of Wrestling, that the ratings were down last week, and they were down again this week. Very low ratings for Monday Night Raw. And I've got to say that we are not living in the Monday Night War era anymore. You guys have to understand how, not you guys as in all the listeners, but my personal opinion is, and you're right, no you guys, here's my opinion. I think that there is far too much emphasis on television ratings, and that emphasis is really a holdover from the Monday Night War. The Monday Night War is the first time that television ratings had any merit at all in the world of professional wrestling, because it was a clear metric that could tell you who was doing better when WWE and WCW were running head to head. Before that was happening, nobody paid any attention to television ratings in wrestling. They paid attention to pay-per-view buys. They paid attention mainly to ticket sales and some attention to merchandise. In the world that we live in now, you know, there's no doubt about it, WWE has become a far more structured, far more corporate place. And when you are a publicly traded company and you are a corporate place, the bottom line of your company is in one spot, and that is the share price of your stock. And I know that we're getting away from wrestling, but if we're going to talk TV ratings, then we get into a conversation about business. And while, yes, you want to have WWE having the biggest TV ratings of anyone, yes, WWE is not a television company. WWE is an entertainment company. You could say they're a wrestling company, but they're not. They're an entertainment company. The bottom line of WWE is in its stock price. Do you not think that Fox, one of the biggest television outlets in the world, has access to all of these ratings? The ratings going down is not brand new over the last 2 weeks. You don't think that the research has been done? Fox valued SmackDown, which gets lower ratings than Raw, as a $1 billion show. They paid a ton of money, And they're giving WWE network TV time because they think SmackDown has that big of a value for their platform. And SmackDown's ratings are worse than Raw's ratings. Why would a TV company do that? The answer is because TV companies know more about this stuff than we do. When WWE is signing deals like that, when WWE is filling up stadiums for WrestleMania, and beyond. They're moving Royal Rumble into a baseball stadium. They're running twice this year in Saudi Arabia. They're running in a stadium in Australia. Like when WWE is doing the level of business that WWE is doing, you can't sit here and tell me that WWE is in trouble. And you can sit there and say, Sam, you're being a shill again. Vince McMahon signs your paychecks. And no, that's not true. Vince doesn't actually sign the paychecks. He's aware of them, though, and he's aware that I am receiving one. And that's true. I get paid by WWE. Doesn't matter. You don't have to get paid by WWE to figure out what's going on. All you have to do, I'm going to do it right now, right here, so you guys can all hear me, okay? Yes, ratings are down, but that is being used to be a symbol of where WWE's business is. WWE is a publicly traded company, okay? I just opened my app up. WWE stock at the time of this recording is up again. It is trading at $92.86 a share. This is up from like $30. I don't know how stocks work, but I'm trying to figure out this app. Okay. It's up $1 from October 3rd. Let me see if I can, okay, there's 1 week, 1 month. Okay, 1 month, all right? September 7th, it's $86. Let's go 6 months, okay? Last April, not even last April 18th, 2018, couple weeks removed from WrestleMania, WWE is trading at $38.90 a share, okay? $38.90 a share on April 19th of this year. Today, it's trading at $92.76. The stock has gone up over 100% in April, May, June, July, August, September, October. Do you know how unheard of that is? For a stock to go from $38 to $92 in 6 months? The only thing that you should be mad at WWE as a company is the fact that you, like me, did not invest in this thing. I'm crazy for it. If I had bought 2 shares, I'd have $120 in my pocket right now. Free money. Free money. Just for understanding that WWE as a company is not in trouble, okay? So this narrative that the WWE is in trouble, you can look at their merchandise if you want. You can look at ticket sales, which people will say are down, but they're phenomenally healthy as far as live event business goes in this day and age. WWE ticket sales are healthy, but they're trading at $92 a share. That's the beginning, middle, and end of the conversation, okay? You could talk about TV ratings if you just want to have a conversation about TV ratings and what can get TV ratings up. That's a perfectly fine conversation to have. But if you want to come to me, the last professional broadcaster, and you want to tell me that WWE as a company is in bad shape because ratings are down, open your stock app on your iPhone and tell me again how bad WWE is doing. You're crazy. You're crazy. Let's get into it. State of Wrestling time, ladies and gentlemen, right now.
It's now time for this week's State of Wrestling.
Yes, it is time for the State of Wrestling, and I've got all the energy in the world, even though it's late at night and I've been doing shows all day, and it's just been a busy Wednesday. It's been a very, very busy Wednesday, but we will always have time for the State of Wrestling. Of course, if you want to see me in my state as I do the State of Wrestling, the only place to watch, to get a video of the entire State of Wrestling segment that we do from the vivacious Notsam studio is, of course, patreon.com/NotsamWrestling. The video of the State of Wrestling is reserved for the Not Sam shills. So if you want to be a Not Sam shill, if you want to watch the state of wrestling, as well as the interviews that come out on this podcast the day the podcast is released, as well as listen to multiple bonus shows every month, as well as getting access to Q&As, as well as getting access to exclusive merchandise, as well as becoming a member of the Not Sam Wrestling community and watching every wrestling show that's on, you should see the Discord chat. Discord is an app that you just get the app on your phone, and you're in this chat room that you can watch along every wrestling show. We've got Not Sam shills in the Discord chat. I love that it's all happening. The only way to be a part of that whole community of Not Sam shills is to sign up at patreon.com/NotSamWrestling. Now let's get into it. Of course, we all know the state of wrestling by now. The top 5 stories of the week from the world of pro wrestling, according to yours truly, the last professional broadcaster, Sam Roberts. And we start with story number 5. Story number 5, my hat goes off to the crowd in Seattle for Monday Night Raw on Monday. Forever, as long as I can remember, I've been saying here on the podcast, just boo the bad guys. And boo the bad guys, what that really means, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to boo every heel and blah, blah, blah. It just means the boo the bad guys philosophy is about not trying to be smarter than the show. And by that, if you happen to be smarter than the show, that's fine. But when I say not trying to be smarter than the show, that's to say allowing yourself to sit back and enjoy it. There's 2 kinds of people in this world. There's the kinds of people that go to a magic show and enjoy the show. And there's the kinds of people that go to a magic show, sit there, try to figure out every trick that they see, and then lean over to the person next to him and goes, "That's fake. I know how he does that." The first group are the group of people that boo the bad guys. The ones that just go to a magic show and enjoy all the amazing tricks that they see. Those are the folks that boo the bad guys. And those are the folks that are enjoying themselves. Those are the folks that are fans. Those are the folks that we're talking to, for the most part, every week here on Not Sam Wrestling. And boy, did Seattle boo the bad guys. I mean, on one end, we talked about it in the bridge segment a little earlier. 2 minutes ago. You talk about the ratings being down for Monday Night Raw. Well, I would think that it's pretty safe to say that fan interest hasn't dissipated, as Elias was able to make one comment about a former Seattle team and was just drowned with boos. And boy, did the audience play their part. I felt like the audience was just so in tune when they realized that it was becoming a thing. They booed harder and harder. They wouldn't stop. It was almost, I know Kevin Owens had to get out what he had to get out, but I was kind of surprised that he was trying to plow through it and not just allowing it to exist. I feel like the longer it went, the better the TV was. And just all around, I thought it was great. It was great that the audience acknowledged, because, if we're being honest, Elias and Kevin Owens are 2 of the best to do what they do. Elias and Kevin Owens, there's no way people don't like Elias and Kevin Owens. We look at those guys and we know they're main event caliber guys that are everything they do. They're going to do great. And we love them. But it's funner to boo them than it is to cheer them. And that's what the audience did. They allowed Elias and Kevin Owens to be heels. They booed them for insulting their city, the way you're supposed to do to a bad guy, especially if he's doing a good job. If we see bad guys on TV, if we see bad guys in arenas, and they're doing a really good job at being a bad guy, boo them. It's the best thing you can do. I think everybody's doing a tremendous job with The Miz, allowing him to be a bad guy. If you've got a guy who's sitting there and you like him being a bad guy and he's doing a good job, give him the reaction he wants. Don't cheer. Boo. And that's what the crowd did in Seattle. I absolutely adored it. So story number 5 is devoted to everybody that was in the building, except the one annoying guy who I'm sure was there cheering. The one annoying guy who wanted to go against what everybody was doing. I'm sure you were there. You are not a part of this. The rest of you, Hat goes off to you. You're all amazing. Story number 4 this week in the state of wrestling. What a week for Cody Rhodes. I feel like we could probably do a Cody story every single week. And it's amazing because, when you leave WWE, when Cody left the way he left, that's one of those things that can easily become a news story the first week, the first month, even the first year. But first year is kind of a stretch. But when you first leave and you're fresh on the indie scene and everything, everybody's excited to see you, and everybody's excited to see what you have to do. But for the most part, for a lot of guys, pretty quickly interest dissipates, and it just kind of goes away because now you're just one of a lot of guys that are out there wrestling, and our focus is back on WWE. The reason there is so much interest paid to guys who leave WWE to go independent is because so much interest was paid to them in WWE because we are so interested in what's going on in WWE. So, by that philosophy, at some point, no matter how interested we are in these guys that leave WWE, if they don't maintain our interest, they're going to lose our interest because we're going to go back to watching WWE again. Cody has defied all of it. Cody gives us something to talk about on a regular basis. And just when you think you've figured out what's going to happen, just when you think you've figured out the answer, Cody changes the question. So this week, Cody, of course, there's the big New Japan show in California. Excuse me. Big New Japan show in California. And Cody's wrestling on it, and he's wrestling Juice Robinson for the United States Championship. And we're just coming off of All In, and we're just coming off of he was doing Ring of Honor shows, and there's so much going on that I think people figured that he was just kind of easing his way back in. Cody hasn't won any gold in New Japan. Cody hasn't main evented in New Japan. So it's one of those things where it's like, okay, I'm sure New Japan's going to use him. I don't think anybody expected Cody to walk in the NWA champion of the world and walk out the NWA champion of the world and the New Japan Pro Wrestling United States champion. Or the IWGP, I guess, United States champion. Unbelievable for Cody. He and Juice Robinson put on an amazing match. The press conference after was incredible. If you haven't seen that video, look it up on YouTube. It's so great. I mean, it's great to the point that you look at it and you go, if Cody was to come back to WWE, how would he exist in an environment that is as scripted as WWE is? I mean, if anything, he's come into his own completely as a creative person outside of WWE. To go back, that's one of the main things you'd be giving up. But nevertheless, just when you think that Cody winning the U.S. Championship is the biggest Cody story you're going to get this week, he then does an interview where all he says, he doesn't say anything beyond this, but he talks about, being in Ring of Honor and his contract and everything. And by the way, I don't know what's going on with that Cody Rhodes Ring of Honor contract, because we had all been led to believe that it was an exclusive deal, but somehow he's holding gold in 3 promotions. He's got a third of the Ring of Honor 6-man championship, I believe. He's the IWGP United States champion, and he's the NWA champion. Now, Ring of Honor and New Japan have a partnership, but, you would expect now Cody to be at all New Japan US shows. You would expect Cody to be at all the Ring of Honor shows. And now, wherever the NWA title is getting defended, Cody's going to be there. I think this month, I think, is the rematch, if I'm not wrong, with Nick Aldis at the NWA 70th anniversary show. But, that doesn't sound all that exclusive to me. So you wonder what kind of conversations have been had between Cody and Ring of Honor. Because what Cody said in an interview this week is that it's very possible that you see the Bullet Club pop up in WWE in January. That's what he said. In January, it's very possible. I have mixed feelings about that. I think now is the right time for Kenny Omega to go to WWE, if he wants to go to WWE. If he never wants to go to WWE, that's fine. But if he ever wants to go to WWE, I think now is the time for Kenny to go. spend a few years there, and just see if it clicks. And if it doesn't, sign a 2-year deal. You can always leave and go back to New Japan. But I think now is the time for Omega to go to WWE. Marty Scurll. I think Adam Page doesn't have to go to WWE. He's a young guy, He would do well. I think Adam Page going to NXT would not be a bad thing at all for Adam Page. But he's with a really good group of guys right now. So I wouldn't be in a rush for that. I think Marty Scurll going to NXT could be very, very interesting. You look at it and you go, okay, Marty Scurll is doing amazing. He had a match that I think was even better than most people expected with Okada at All In. But in the Bullet Club right now, does he grow? Is he going to be the leader of the Bullet Club, right? And the answer is, you'd honestly have to have Kenny Omega and Cody Rhodes leave the Bullet Club for Marty Scurll to move upward. And even if he did move upward, I know he's a singles guy, but is he bigger than the Young Bucks, or do the Young Bucks become the de facto leaders and Scurll kind of stays secondary to them? Look, not that being secondary in the Bullet Club is anything to shake a stick at, you know what I mean? That's not a bad gig, but he's had the gig now for a little while. Is there more growing to do, or at some point do you have to leave the Bullet Club? And if you are leaving the Bullet Club, and I don't think he has to leave the Bullet Club, he can run this out for a while. He can coast for a while. He's doing amazingly well. But, if he is going to leave the Bullet Club at any point, I think the only place to go is WWE. I don't think it makes sense to not be in the Bullet Club and be on the independents, or be in New Japan or Ring of Honor, or even Impact. I think he would have to go to NXT. And I think Marty Scurll would do really, really well in NXT. So I would say Kenny Omega, main roster immediately. I would say Marty Scurll should do some serious thinking about NXT. I think the Young Bucks, I still wonder if the Young Bucks will ever be as successful in WWE as they are outside of WWE. And I'm not sure that they will be, to tell you the truth. It's a whole system over there. You heard Court Bauer talking about it. There are people who will work and people who won't work. At some point, I think the Bucks have to go. I don't know in what context they work in WWE. Their style is so meta, and WWE is not that. So I'm not sure that it would be a great move for the Young Bucks. And honestly, I think Cody could use another year of growing and growing and growing on the independents. I think Cody needs to twist the conversation. Right now, the conversation about Kenny Omega is this guy the best wrestler in the world? I think Cody needs to try to get himself to a place where that's the conversation that's happening about him. Is Cody Rhodes the best wrestler in the world? I think there's still room for him to grow, and he's still young. I think give it another year outside of WWE and really, really put the work in. Not that Cody wouldn't. I'm sure he would. Just keep doing what you're doing. And theoretically, you could come back to WWE and you're AJ Styles level. I think if Cody goes to WWE, he runs the risk of it's a big deal when it first happens. But after enough time passes, do you just go back to where you were before? Do you just go back to being Cody Rhodes? Everybody still remembers Cody Rhodes really well. If you give it another year and truly make it undeniable, not that you aren't already, but truly make it undeniable, is it a better investment? I would say yes. If I'm Cody Rhodes, I think I'm waiting another year. Because we all saw what happened to, Neville, for instance. Coincidentally, that brings me to story number 3. Neville's back. Yes, Pac. Neville is back he's Pac. And Pac has returned. Neville wrestled as Pac, of course, before he was in NXT. And we haven't heard or seen from him, since for a year. It's been a year since anybody heard or saw from Neville in any capacity. Well, in his personal life, I'm sure they saw him. But in terms of any type of public life, any type of wrestling life, he's been gone for a year. He popped back up this week at a Dragon Gate show. really interesting choice, really a stand-up choice. The fact that he went back to a place where he really made a name for himself on the independents and didn't show up in Impact or Ring of Honor or New Japan or whatever. Like, he went back to a spot where he made his bones. I respect that in a big, big way. He looked even more cut up than when he left. He looked like he was 0% body fat, still had the beard and everything. The crowd went nuts for him. He hasn't really said much since that one spot. I hope that he now starts making the rounds. I hope that he really gets out there and gets after it. Because he had a nice buzz, a real nice buzz when he came to WWE. But the buzz that he had built was in a world of non-WWE wrestling that is not nearly the size that it is today. Just a few years ago, wrestling outside of WWE was not nearly as big or as healthy as it is today. I think Neville has the opportunity to really turn some heads in outside of WWE wrestling world as it exists right now. And I'm super excited to see what he does. It was good to see him, though. Speaking of big changes, story number 2, and we are going to go over Super Showdown. Spoiler, that's story number 1. Story number 2 is that Shawn Michaels is bald. We had to give this a number 2 spot. We had to separate this entirely from the Super Showdown conversation because, he cut his hair a while ago. He cut his hair short, and that's fine. But he comes out with that cowboy hat on. Nobody's surprised. He wears a cowboy hat all the time. His short hair is under there. We've seen it. He cut it. That's cool. Bald as a bat. Is that an expression? He's cue ball bald. He's stone cold bald. I'm looking in the ring, and I'm going, Kane has a wig. Triple H is bald. Shawn Michaels is bald. I'll tell you something about the Attitude Era. A much hairier time in the world of sports entertainment. Everybody's bald. Everybody just shaved it all off. I guess Shawn was thinning on top. Triple H still had a full head of hair, I think. That's what it looked like when I saw it. Thank God The Undertaker let his hair grow back, because even though, maybe it's not as full as it once was, it's still long and flowing and Undertaker-like. Otherwise it's just a ring full of bald guys. I know Kane's got hair, but it's stapled onto his mask. Really interesting. I wonder if the rumors are true and Shawn Michaels is coming back, how do we react to a bald Shawn Michaels? How do we react to that? I think that Shawn's got to grow the beard, though. That big, almost like Triple H has. But that big, bushy hunting beard? He brought it out onto TV a couple of times. One of the pre-shows or something that he did several years ago, before I was there. He had that big, giant, bushy, hunter, outdoorsman beard. I think if you're going to, look what I'm doing. If you're going to lose it up top, you kind of got to grow it in the bottom. That's where we're at in 2018. So I would say Shawn should probably grow the beard and just, so that way it's not just a guy who shaved his head. That way it's a guy who's making a conscious fashion style decision. But I don't know. I'm interested to see if his hat gets knocked off again at Super Showdown, because I need to live with this. I need to sit with this. The sexy boy has no hair on his head. I need to sit with this for a while and really, I don't even know what the shape of his head looks like. He's had long hair forever. It's not going to be worse than that Dutch boy haircut he had for a little while, but I'd like to know, I'd like to spend some time sitting with the shape of Shawn Michaels' hair, head, and that's only going to happen if we see him at Super Showdown with no hat on. I think it's important that all of us as wrestling fans spend some time sitting down with the shape of Shawn Michaels' head. We don't know what it is. We've been watching Shawn for as long as we've been watching him. He means the world to all of us. But we don't know what his head is shaped like. And right now, that's very important because he's a bald man. I was shocked when I saw it. I had no clue. But they don't keep me informed of when wrestlers get haircuts. They think it's a weird thing, so I don't ask. But still, it's a shocking thing. Story number 1 is all about the place where we will see Shawn Michaels' bald head. If you would excuse me for a moment, I'm going to take another sip. Oh, yeah. And that is, of course, Super Showdown. 2018 Super Showdown. It goes down on Saturday morning. Here on the East Coast, it starts at 5 a.m. Eastern. Hit me up on Twitter and stuff. I want to know where you guys are going to be watching it, and if you do want that pre-show, I mean, not the pre, I'm not doing a pre-show, but if you do want that post-show for the Patreon listeners, let me know if you think that that's something you'd be interested in. But like I said earlier, I know I'll be up at 5 a.m. watching this thing in bed. I can't wait for it. Let's go down some of the matches that are promised to us in this thing. We're going to start with Asuka and Naomi taking on the Iconics. Now, if you watched SmackDown this week, and I hope that you watched SmackDown this week, we saw Peyton Royce versus Asuka. And Peyton Royce looked hella strong against her. Hella strong. There's also, and she lost, but still looked very strong. There's also this idea that the Iconics are in their hometown. That's really, I think, why this match is happening. The WWE was like, look, we got 2 Australian people on the whole roster. We got to have them on the show. So I believe that the Iconics are still going to work as heels. You know, I think they're going to insult, even though they're from the country. I don't know if they're from Melbourne. You like that pronunciation? I don't know if they're from Melbourne, but I still think that they're gonna insult either the city or the soccer team or the stadium or something. I think they'll still work as heels. I'm interested to see how big the setup is, because right now I'm just playing in my head that the theme song, and just thinking it's like it could be epic if there's like a giant screen and a big long ramp in a stadium full of Aussies going like yay. It could be. The potential entrances could be great. Let's keep in mind, the last time it was a big international stadium show was the Greatest Royal Rumble, and we saw the greatest entrance of all time, Titus O'Neil entering the Royal Rumble match. So who knows what we'll see at the Super Showdown. I do think the Iconics are going to lose the match, though. I do think Asuka and Naomi are going to win. I think the Iconics are going to put the work in so that even the Aussies figure out that they're working as heels, try to get some boos out of this crowd, and I think that in their hometown, they're going to put on a hell of a match. I think that Peyton Royce was made to look strong against Asuka so that we could believe that that they might win in this match against Peyton Royce and against Naomi and Asuka, but I think Naomi and Asuka will come out on top in this match. We move on to the Cruiserweight Championship match, Cedric Alexander versus Buddy Murphy. Look, I think Cedric Alexander is going to keep the title, but it could, or it could go over to Buddy Murphy. I'm kind of 50-50 on this, but what I do think is that these cruiserweights need to realize, and I think they will realize, that this is a massive opportunity for them. There's not a lot of pay-per-view time for the cruiserweights, especially a pay-per-view this big, that's hyped this much, and it's this global of a show. So I think the cruiserweights need to try to steal the show as much as possible, not just for the sake of stealing the show, but to tell people, look, we got something pretty cool going on this 205 Live show that you're not watching. There's a lot of WWE Network subscribers that are going to be watching this Super Showdown show that are not watching 205 Live, and it's simply a matter of turning on the network on a Wednesday night. So I think that the 205 Live guys are going to do what they have to do to get the interest peaked in that show. That is what that match is going to be all about. SmackDown Tag Team titles are on the line. It's the Bar and the New Day. I think that the New Day will probably retain, but in my heart, what do I want? I want the Bar to win. You know, the Bar getting moved over to SmackDown feels like a great opportunity to make the Bar a bigger deal. And I want that to start now. I'm ready for it. You know, for the first while that the Bar was drafted to SmackDown, they were barely even on TV. So I think the Bar is just this great tag team. I think it's the best thing Cesaro and Sheamus have done in quite some time, and it's only getting better. And I think that those two holding the SmackDown Tag Team Championship would make for a great show every week. You know, I think that they're great in the ring. They could have their own segment, whatever they have to do. But the Bar being title holders and being on TV every week would be really good for SmackDown, in my personal opinion. I think that that should happen. I'm not sure that it will, but it should. Speaking of SmackDown, of course, the Women's Championship, one of the most hyped matches, arguably to me, especially based on this week, what closed the show. AJ wasn't even there. Neither was Joe. I think that the Becky Lynch-Charlotte match might be the most hyped match on SmackDown, and rightfully so. I think that this is a great opportunity. We moved in a great direction at Hell in a Cell when Becky Lynch won the title and she didn't shake Charlotte's hand. That's the type of stuff we've been looking for out of Becky Lynch. She reminded us that she's a heel, but she got the victory so that we weren't disappointed. And if you listen to the reactions, they've been better. It hasn't just been cheers for Becky, like so that it feels like the audience is rebelling. I think something just fell. So that the audience is rebelling against WWE. You know, the way when Roman would come out and he'd get booed, it was a rebellious boo. We are not accepting this. That's not really happening anymore. Becky's still getting cheers, but she's getting some boos. And the cheer and it's kind of like an acknowledgement. The WWE has done enough where Becky Lynch feels like what she's doing is right, and you kind of understand where she's coming from. So the cheers are not so unfounded. And she's giving you a reason to boo by still, even though she's the champion, being mean to Charlotte. That's the reason to boo. So they're crafting a pretty great character in Becky Lynch. I think that she will retain the Women's Championship at Super Showdown, but I think this time she's not going to win it clean. I think this time she's going to cheat to beat Charlotte. And we will cement even harder that she's a heel when that happens. And I think that that'll be valuable for the Becky Lynch character. We move on to the Raw Women's Champion, not the Women's Championship match, but the Raw Women's match, which is Ronda Rousey and the Bellas versus the Riot Squad. I have no doubt that Ronda Rousey and the Bellas will win, but here's what I'm hoping. You know, there's a rumor going around that Nikki Bella is going to get the shot at Ronda Rousey's Raw Women's Championship at the Evolution pay-per-view at the end of the month. So we could do this a couple different ways. The Bellas and Ronda Rousey could win and then have this sort of respectful match where Ronda goes, you know, you impressed me last night, you know, on Raw or whatever on Monday. You impressed me on Saturday in Australia. And then Nikki Bella goes, well, why don't you give me a shot at that title? And it's like, oh, well, we respect each other. Let's have this dream match, blah, blah, blah. Or you could do what I would do and have the Bellas turn on Ronda Rousey. I think that that's the most interesting thing you can do. And that's when we go back into the plan that I was talking about last week. You can see the clip of it on YouTube if you want, but the whole State of Wrestling video is at patreon.com/NotSamWrestling. That's when we go back to my plan of last week and start the Divas stable, where it's the Bellas, you throw Alexa Bliss in, you throw Alicia Fox in, Mickie James, Maria Kanellis. The Divas return to reclaim the word diva as heels. You create a heel group that embrace the term diva and assert that the divas are better than the female WWE superstars. And I think that not only at that point will you have a compelling match where you've got a heel Nikki Bella versus a babyface Ronda Rousey, you've now given the fans reason to boo Brie Bella, which they might be doing anyway, and you got a hell of a Women's Survivor Series match. On the Raw side, if you've got your divas on Raw, you've now got Alexa Bliss, the Bellas, Alicia Fox, and Mickie James versus Ronda Rousey, Bayley, Sasha Banks, and then you could throw in a Dana Brooke. You could eliminate one of the either Bayley or Sasha Banks and put in the Riot Squad. You could just throw in Ruby Riott. You could there's many different things you could do in that scenario, but you've got a reason right there to do a 5-on-5 or shrink it down to 4-on-4 Raw Women's Survivor Series match where it's the female WWE superstars versus the divas. I think it's a brilliant idea. We move forward to the Shield against Braun Strowman, Drew McIntyre, and Dolph Ziggler. I think the Shield comes out on top. I think that you need to, if you're going to do a show like this in Australia in a stadium, you got to have that shot of the Shield standing victorious. Now, you could have a couple things happen. I think Braun Strowman is going to stay a heel, so I don't think he's going to turn on Drew McIntyre and Dolph Ziggler. But I think you could have, instead of having Dean turn on the Shield, and I think you might have some teases of that, and then find out in the end they were just teases and everything's fine. The Shield is together. The Shield is okay. But maybe seeds of doubt start getting planted in Drew McIntyre. Maybe you start to notice that Drew McIntyre is kind of looking at Dolph Ziggler a little bit crooked. And very, very slowly, the seeds of Drew McIntyre turning face start to happen. Maybe. I think it's a good idea. Daniel Bryan versus The Miz, #1 contender match. I talked about this a few weeks ago, and I stand by it. I've said from the time that Daniel Bryan came back that Daniel Bryan versus The Miz should be your WWE Championship match at WrestleMania. And I still believe that it should be. But it can't be as predictable as I and a lot of other people have said it. Look, I said that a long time ago, and since I said it, I've heard it from other people. I've heard it on other radio shows and podcasts. Like, look, the word of Sam Roberts spreads around. What can I tell you? But, as I said a few weeks ago, and I stand by it, Daniel Bryan should win this match. I think he needs the win anyway, and it would make people, because in people's heads, they're like, okay, Miz beats Daniel Bryan for the #1 contendership. He goes on to become the champion. Daniel Bryan wins the Royal Rumble. Miz versus Daniel Bryan at WrestleMania. Here's the way I see it happening. Okay? And this tags into another match. We have Daniel Bryan beat The Miz. Right? Daniel Bryan beats The Miz. He becomes the #1 contender. Later in the evening, Samoa Joe shocks the world and wins the WWE Championship from AJ Styles. You got a lot of good guys winning. If you have it going my way, Samoa Joe would be a bad guy. He would shock a lot of people if he did it. And I think it's time. I think this would be a good time for a Samoa Joe run. At that point, you go towards either Crown Jewel or Survivor Series and have the Samoa Joe versus Daniel Bryan championship match. Samoa Joe wins. I don't think that The Miz gets involved, in my personal opinion. The Miz probably gets involved in a peripheral way. Maybe The Miz is backstage. Maybe The Miz does something on screen. I'll think about how The Miz gets involved when we get closer to November. But for whatever reason, Daniel Bryan loses. That's his one shot. He does not win. We go forward to either the December pay-per-view or even Royal Rumble. I might push this until Royal Rumble. AJ Styles might get his rematch in December. Samoa Joe retains. Then Samoa Joe has a match with The Miz. The Miz beats Samoa Joe. The Miz becomes your WWE champion at the Royal Rumble, okay? Now everybody's going, well, clearly Daniel Bryan's going to win the Royal Rumble because The Miz just won it. But here's what happens. It's down to 5 guys, and The Miz is in there. And Daniel Bryan is in there. It's down to all. It's here. You got your final 4 guys in the Royal Rumble, right? It's 3 Raw guys and Daniel Bryan. So you're looking like, oh, we're doing a David and Goliath thing. It's Seth Rollins, it's Dean Ambrose, it's Daniel Bryan, it's Braun Strowman. Your final 4 in the Royal Rumble. So you're going, uh-oh, right? They're going, blah, 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 blah. All 3 of them are trying to eliminate Braun Strowman, right? All of a sudden, The Miz runs out, the new WWE champion, and eliminates Daniel Bryan. The Miz interferes in the Royal Rumble and gets Daniel Bryan eliminated. That way there's no heat except on The Miz, which is good heat. Now, we're down to Seth Rollins, Dean Ambrose, Braun Strowman. Actually, no, I did it wrong. Switch out Braun Strowman. Switch out Dean Ambrose. Switch out Dean Ambrose. Put in AJ Styles. Your final 4 are Daniel Bryan, AJ Styles. No, switch out Braun Strowman. Your final 5 include Braun Strowman. Okay, we're figuring this out as we go. Okay, here's your final 5 in the Royal Rumble. Miz has just won the WWE Championship. Roman Reigns is still your Universal Champion. Let's be honest. So your final 5 is Braun Strowman, Daniel Bryan, AJ Styles, Seth Rollins, Dean Ambrose. The 4 of them get together, eliminate Braun Strowman. Now you're looking at all baby faces. AJ, Rollins, Ambrose, Bryan. Boom, 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 boom. They're fighting. That's when The Miz interferes. and he tries to eliminate AJ. I mean, he tries to eliminate Bryan. And AJ throws Miz out of here, but in an effort to throw Miz out, also eliminates Bryan, right? So Bryan's eliminated legit by somebody in the Rumble, which is AJ, but in reality, it's the Miz's fault. Now you're down to Dean, AJ, Seth, and we get down to it, and Seth Rollins wins the Royal Rumble. So you're now looking at a WrestleMania where you've got Seth Rollins versus Roman Reigns for the Universal Championship. I know, it's a pipe dream, whatever. It's my fanfic, okay? Then we get to February where we can finally sort it out and Daniel Bryan can finally get his shot and he goes on to WrestleMania to face The Miz. That's how I get there. So Samoa Joe's winning the WWE Championship just so we can get to the place that I want to get to. Moving forward, thank God, John Cena and Bobby Lashley versus Kevin Owens and Elias. I think that's pretty obvious. John Cena and Bobby Lashley win. And, of course, the main event, at least it's being billed, The Undertaker with Kane versus Triple H with Shawn Michaels. I do think that there's a high probability that the rumors are true and this is going to evolve into a tag match later on. I don't have a problem with that whatsoever, but I think The Undertaker is going to win this match. For some reason, ever since he lost to Roman Reigns and came back from it, The Undertaker has been in a rebuilding phase. Squashed John Cena. Came back and put Rusev in that casket. The Undertaker is being hyped up. The Undertaker is being built back to becoming a phenom. Roman Reigns was not The Undertaker's swan song. Something else is. And it's not Triple H at Super Showdown. Okay? The Undertaker is going to continue to be strong. The Undertaker is going to win that match. It will evolve into a tag team match, but The Undertaker beats Triple H at Super Showdown. That's all the time I've got for you guys this week. Folks, I appreciate you being here with me. To all you guys on Patreon to get the show early, I'm sorry that early was a little bit later, but it's almost 10 o'clock on Wednesday night, and I still got to figure out what I'm going to talk about on the radio tomorrow. I got to edit this podcast. I got to go, folks. Thank you for being here, and we will see you next time on You Know What It Is. Not Sam Wrestling. Goodbye, everybody.
Thanks for listening. Follow at Not Sam on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube.
Rate, review, and subscribe. This has been Not Sam Wrestling. Not Sam.